We're on to New Orleans as the Indianapolis Colts welcome in the New Orleans Saints to Lucas Oil Stadium here in week 8. So, what do the Colts need to do in order to get back on track and get a W at home? Let's talk about it. Welcome to the Horseshoe Huddle Podcast presented by Fan Nation on SI.com, part of the Fans First Sports Network. My name is Andrew Moore, and I'm joined here as always by my fellow writer, co-host, and analyst of the Horseshoe Huddle Podcast, Drake Wally, who just had a birthday on Wednesday. So happy birthday to him. Guys, if you haven't told him happy birthday yet, please do so in the chat. But Drake, both these teams coming off of a loss, coming off of a dramatic loss, I would say. Both teams sit at 3-4. This could be a chance for them to get back on track. So I think both teams are taking this very seriously. But how are you doing, buddy?
Doing really good, and I absolutely agree with you. I think that, well, actually, one more thing. I feel super old. 33 for some reason. It feels different, but it was a wonderful birthday, so thank you so much. But yeah, man, they both have 3-4 record. You know, they're both kind of like at a point in the season where they're like, what are we doing from here on out? This is a bigger game than it seems. Like the Colts really would look a lot better with a 4-4 record instead of a 3-5 record. And same for the Saints. So there's a lot to play for here for both of these teams. And I think it could end up being a closer game than some think. And I think that there is a chance where both defenses stand tall and it becomes a little bit of a defensive slugfest too.
Exactly. We're already got the super chats flowing in. The chat is ready to go
Oh,
for
man.
this evening. First one of the night is Truett with the super sticker. Truett says, "Hi, Andrew and Drake. I haven't forgot about your special day." Truett's right there on there as well. So really appreciate the super sticker from you. Brandon Moses coming in with the 99-cent super sticker. And guess what? We're going to shout out Brandon Moses because he will become a father tomorrow. Him and his beautiful wife, Paige, giving birth to twins. So Paige is a superhero for being able to do that. And I know the both of them are going to make fantastic parents. He goes, there you go. Celebrate 2 more Moseses in the world tomorrow. I did it wrong. I know. Hey, it's fine. It is what it is. Appreciate it, Brandon. And hey, good luck to Paige tomorrow. Be the best supporter you can of her because you're not going to do anything. But can't wait to see both your girls here very soon. So congratulations to you both. My beautiful wife Danielle with her nightly super sticker as well, getting us off to a hot start. She's actually out of town at a teachers conference, so it's just been me and our dog Cooper kind of just hanging out at the house, getting a little half bachelor week. So, but thank you for supporting as you always do, and can't wait to see you back home tomorrow. Logan Schmidt is also in the house, the legend himself. Stats Matt, did I see a Brandon Moses super chat? I know, very rare, but hey, Brandon Moses is in the chat. So we're going to talk all about Colts Saints tonight and cover it from all different angles. So if you haven't done so, please go ahead and follow us on social media. Go ahead and like Horseshoe Huddle on Facebook, follow at Colts on FN on X, and subscribe to the Horseshoe Huddle YouTube channel. Hit that bell so you know whenever Drake and I go live, whenever Shad goes live with the Saddle Up show. And so that way we can continue to grow the Horseshoe Huddle YouTube. We're still closing in on that 2,000 subscriber mark. So if you haven't done so, please subscribe. And if you can't catch us live, Apple, Spotify, Google, wherever you listen to podcasts, we're on there as well. So make sure you subscribe and give us a 5-star review. Stephanie Graver on the way to Hooters. She is also there with my wife. Hey, go smash on some wings, watch some football, and listen to the Horseshoe Huddle podcast. Hooters is the way to go. But Drake, let's dive right into it here, buddy. Colts 1-point dogs against the Saints here this weekend at Lucas Oil Stadium. So Vegas is pretty much calling it a toss-up. And the way these two teams have been going, I mean, both teams are 3-5. Both teams seem to have one side of the ball playing quite a bit better than the other side of the ball. So it's going to be a very interesting matchup. And I think really where both teams sit currently, whoever wins this contest could really give them some momentum and change the trajectory of their season.
Yeah, and especially for the Saints, I think that they're coming off of a couple, I think they are coming off of consecutive losses, if I'm not mistaken. regardless, like they really started to slide once they led up that massive lead to Green Bay, and then their season started to kind of tilt a little bit. And for the Colts, it's been the same type of rollout like as the Saints, but in a different way with Gardner Minshew kind of falling off the hill here, with his turnovers. And so this is a couple of teams that desperately need to get a win. Like we said before we kind of kicked off the show, it's one of those things where whoever's going to get this win ends up going 4-4. It's a lot better than 3-5. And historically, when a team is 3-5, they really don't have the best odds to finish strong for the rest of the 9 weeks and kind of get into the playoffs when you're already down that many games.
And you already touched on it here is for at least on the Colts side of things, a lot of the both the past couple losses could probably be attributed to the Colts not being able to take care of the football. And that really lands solely on Gardner Minshew, 8 turnovers in the past 2 games. So Drake, I'm going to ask you this just point blank. Do you think Minshew turns it around here this weekend against New Orleans, or are we going to see those turnover problems kind of rear their ugly heads once again?
His big thing, as we've talked about, is fumbling the ball. I think that the glaring stat is 27 fumbles and 27 starts. Okay. He's far less, like you mentioned in our last episode, you're not as worried about his interceptions. So I think as long as he just doesn't fumble the football, he'll probably be okay. I just don't see him having a bad performance for a third straight game. I think that the Colts have a better opportunity this time to get the run game going, which is going to help him. I mean, they did what they did with Taylor and Moss both getting 18 carries, 132 total yards between the two against the Browns. They can do that against the Saints. The Saints are nowhere near the Browns' defense against the run, so they're more middle of the pack. So I think that Minshew has a good opportunity here to bounce back. But like we've said before, I do think you got to have a balanced approach. You can't ask him to do too much, and you get that balanced approach from starting the ground game early and establishing that tone as the game goes along.
Yeah, the Colts just can't play from behind. I think that's what's gotten them into so much trouble these past couple weeks, is trying to play from behind and having to rely on Gardner Minshew to get you back into the game. And that just hasn't been productive, And the Saints see this. The Saints see the turnover issues that Gardner Minshew has had over the past 2 games, whether it's when he's under pressure, getting after him. They see that he's having a hard time holding on to that football. So anytime a Saints defender gets close to Gardner Minshew in that pocket, you can expect them to be punching at that football, trying to whack that football out of his grasp to try to get turnovers. And the Colts offensive coordinator, Jim Bob Cooter, talked about it this week, that they've really put a focus on Gardner Minshew trying to protect the football in practice this week. They know that it's a problem. Gardner knows that it's a problem, but until it gets fixed, teams are really going to try to key in on that, because that's just who Gardner Minshew is at the moment. Is he's a guy that if you put pressure on him, he will turn the ball over. So that's something that the Colts are really going to have to try to work through. And Gardner Minshew specifically has to hold on to that football when he's under pressure, because I mean, we've seen when he's not trying to force the ball down the field and he gets good pass protection, he can make it dink and dunk it all the way down the field and be patient, deliver accurate footballs. But that pressure, as soon as that pocket collapses, man, you're just kind of almost waiting for that fumble to happen.
Yeah, and it's been his weakness is identifying those blitzes and just avoiding blitzes. Going back to the Baltimore Ravens game where a safety, Kyle Hamilton, had 3 sacks on him. But it's really interesting because last year Matt Ryan had the issue with the fumbles. And now, we're seeing a guy like Gardner Minshew. And I have a question for you. Do you think that it's just a fumbling issue for a quarterback? Is it just a case of you're trying to do too much and you're not pulling the ball and protecting it quick enough, and you're just trying to do too much with the play? Or is it just bad fundamentals and you're just not as good as others, I guess, at holding on to the football when you're hit?
I think it's a lot of times a case by case basis. I mean, because you do see some quarterbacks who are trying to escape and they're only holding it with one hand. You're taught as a quarterback to keep both hands on that football really at all times, especially when you're in the pocket. So I mean, obviously you don't want to squeeze too tight of that football, because then when you squeeze too tight on that football, then it can actually make it easier for a defender to get it out. But you don't want to get the football too far away from your body. You want to hold it tight, close to your chest. That's a lot of times when when teaching those fundamentals, because you don't want the quarterback to hold the ball way up here. You don't want it to hold it out away from their body, hold it with just one hand. It's really close in the center of your chest, and keep both hands on it at all times. So I'm sure they did that, even though it's going to be inside at Lucas Oil Stadium this weekend. I'm sure they practice with some wet balls just to kind of try to make sure Gardner Minshew has that full sense of grip on the football. But again, it could be a strength issue as well. So it just really all depends on the quarterback. But I think for Gardner Minshew specifically, we've seen him have both hands on the football. He definitely, I think, could hold the football a little bit closer to his body. But a lot of times it seems like a lack of focus almost, because when the pocket is collapsing, he's trying to figure out where to go and get rid of it, and he's not really thinking about protecting the football. That's at least what I have seen on film since Gardner Minshew has been a member of the Colts. We have another super chat this night from the CFO himself, Patrick Rye. Patrick with a legendary $5 super chat says, just got here, so might as well drop this now. For open bars, diapers, Mrs. Moore's next road trip, and happy birthday to Drake. We're not going to say Patrick's comment after this one because he's become a menace again. But hey, Patrick, we really, really do appreciate all of your support, buddy. As Drake sees Patrick's comment there.
Very nice.
Chat. Really appreciate all your support, buddy. You make our nights every Monday and Thursday nights here. So Drake, let's switch gears a little bit. Let's talk about this running game. Obviously, the Cleveland Browns had the number one rush defense, or close to the top of being a rush defense in the NFL. Didn't matter. The Colts with Jonathan Taylor and Zach Moss really put it to them. 120 some yards, but just between those two last week against the Browns. And as you said, the Saints run defense it's not terrible by any means, but it's more about middle of the pack, and I think you even talked about this in your piece that you wrote for Horseshoe Huddle today. That's an area that the Colts could really take advantage, especially with Jonathan Taylor getting back into the thick of things, and Zach Moss is still second in the NFL in rushing yards.
Yeah, and I think it's not just that you have an opportunity because they're not as good as the Browns were against the run or with run defense. It's also that they're so good at pass defense that you need to actually probably run the ball, especially with a guy like Minshew, who isn't the vertical thrower. He's not the rollout passer or the mobile guy that can really, move a defensive secondary. They're going to have to run the ball to bring him in. So then you can allow bigger shots down the field. And I think that you're just going to see such a heavy emphasis on the run. I think that you might see more what you saw with Minshew's 23. I think he had 23 attempts in that game against the Browns. I think you're going to see a similar amount there. I think that they're going to try to do something similar with Taylor, similar with Moss, where you get both of these guys between, I'd say, 10 and 20 carries. It was on the higher end of that. I don't know if it's going to be 18 and 18. It's probably going to be more Taylor than Moss this time, but rest assured, Zach Moss has established himself as a piece of this offense. So, yeah, man, I think that you almost have to get the ground game going, because that Saints secondary, they bring it, and they've got good linebackers. They've got Carl Granderson too, a great pass rusher that could get to Minshew if Smith doesn't play and Freeland does. You'll see Freeland lined up with Jordan. You'll see him lined up with Granderson. I think you just got to get that ground game going to give Minshew a chance to beat that really good pass defense.
Cam Jordan's the one I'm worried about, because we've seen Cam Jordan just absolutely wreck games before. Stats Matt says the Saints defense is 4th in passing yards allowed and 12th in rush yards allowed. So definitely quite a discrepancy. They are pretty good against the pass, but again, if the Colts want to establish the run game, and the run game has been working. I mean, it certainly worked last week against the Browns. Shane Steichen, and I want to credit Zach Hicks for bringing this up in one of his pieces just on the Colts running game. For most of the season, the Colts have been an inside zone running team, and more recently, Shane Steichen has been using outside runs, switching things up to try to help this running game not only get going, but to not be so predictable on offense as well. Jonathan Taylor last week, 18 carries for 75 yards. Zach Moss, I think, had 18 carries for 57 yards. They were just they weren't huge games by any means, but altogether, you're still just moving the offense down the field. And I think there's both of these guys could have much more success against the Saints defense than what they did against Cleveland last week. There's going to be opportunities there for the Colts to run the football, and we all know that Dennis Allen usually tries to use an aggressive defense. If he becomes too aggressive at the right time, we know Jonathan Taylor can certainly hit that home run, and we've seen already this season that Zach Moss can hit a home run too. So I honestly expect another heavy dose of this two-headed monster. Now, Zach Moss has been on the injury report this week. He was a limited participant in practice today, which, if that means anything, maybe it's Jonathan Taylor's time. Maybe it's finally time for him to be that bell cow back this season. Again, his fourth game back after getting activated off the PUP list. But if the Colts are going to win this game, I really believe it's going to have to be on the back of Jonathan Taylor and Zach Moss.
Yeah, and to kind of go back to if Smith doesn't play, because I know that he's still questionable. Blake Freeland's strength is run blocking. In fact, he's actually a pretty nasty run blocker for a tackle. So I think that him on the right side, that's going to give him an opportunity. That's the run blocking side, whereas the left, well, at least outside of Tua Tagovailoa, the left side is the pass blocking side. So I think that gives Freeland a chance to really hit some outside runs hard and hit some second level players. And hey, like you said, if Dennis Allen if he's too aggressive, especially with Jonathan Taylor, boy, that could just be the end of any sort of defensive game plan if you let him hit a home run.
Blake Freeland so far, and I think he started the past 3 games for the Colts.
Yeah.
And he has gone up against Aaron Donald, Myles Garrett, Josh Allen, 3 of the best pass rushers in the game. And now he's going to face Cam Jordan. Talk about baptism by fire, just throwing him out there to the wolves and saying, hey, take your lumps. And I mean, it's good for him in the long run, going up against this stiff competition. He's going to go through his ups and downs, but
exactly.
He seems to be getting his feet underneath him. He isn't playing, I wouldn't say he's playing at a starter's level quite yet, but you can see him getting better with each game as it passes. So but then there's the talk. I mean, the Colts still will have to throw to win this game. They can't just run it 60 times with their 2 running backs and expect to come out on top. They're going to have to make some plays through the air against this 4th ranked passing defense for the New Orleans Saints. And Drake, I want to talk about a guy that made some headlines with his comments this week. Michael Pittman Jr. And his comments to Nate Atkins, our friend at the Indy Star, talking about after the game, he said, maybe I'm just not a big part of this offense. Well, when he on Wednesday, when the Colts players met with the media again, I want to commend Michael Pittman Jr. for this, because Pittman was not required to talk to the media that day. He could have just not said anything and said, I don't really care what the media is saying. I don't care what the headline is. I want to give Pittman some credit. He came to his locker. He wanted the media to come over so he could clarify things. And basically what he said was, I'm a terrible loser. I've been a terrible loser my whole life. I was just heated. I was dramatic in the moment, and I did not mean what I said. I know my worth here in Indy for this offense, for this team, and how everyone feels about me. And then that he loves Indy. And honestly, I thought that was pretty big of him, because a lot of other wide receivers, especially the ones that you would consider being diva wide receivers, would not do that. And Michael Pittman came out, he owned it. He said, I shouldn't have said it. I didn't mean it. And I want to make sure this is right. So credit to Michael Pittman Jr. for doing that, and for really stepping up as a leader and showing, this wasn't right what I said, and I want to make it right.
Yeah, and when you think about how the game ended, how it played out, and the fact that you look at his stat line, the yards are fantastic. I think he had like 80 something receiving
83
yards.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, off of most of it off of that 75-yard bomb. But look, he only had 2 catches on the game. I think he was targeted 5 times. That's only 40%. Not his best performance. The team also lost. The team also, and now we know it's for a fact, got kind of robbed, of a victory.
Don't get
And
me started, Drake.
oh
Don't
no, I
get me
know.
started again.
We can kind of do a quick pit stop and hop off of that one. But look, all of those factors put in. This is a dude who was willing to throw up the peace sign and probably get fined and get penalized. He is an emotional dude. When he runs with purpose to run over people. He's a unique type of receiver, unique personality. And I think that against what some writers said that he was arrogant, he was just, laughing at himself and stuff, whatever, write it, blow it out there. If you want to get some views, go for it. But Michael Pittman's the real deal. I think he does get that contract that he deserves, whether it's an extension or whether it's next season. He's going to be a Colt. I mean, you can tell he's bought into the system, and I think he likes Shane Steichen a lot, and vice versa too. So credit to Pittman for coming in front of the camera and addressing everything. And like you said, he wasn't required to do that, and he did it anyway.
Yeah, and now transitioning to the game on Sunday. Honestly, I think this lines up for a really big game from Michael Pittman Jr. I really do. I think he's a little bit pissed. I mean, obviously he's pissed off. He was pissed off about losing two straight. He's upset that he wasn't able to make a bigger impact on offense last week, and I think I think this is just what Pittman needs. Now, am I expecting like a 175-yard performance out of Pittman? Probably not, because we have to remember Gardner Minshew is still throwing him the football. But it would not surprise me at all if Pittman goes for over 100 yards, gets another 10 catches, and gets a touchdown, leading this Colts team and receiving to show, I'm still the top dog here, and I meant what I said. I can do I can have a bigger role in this offense and almost have a bigger impact, but at the same time, he's not saying, I I'm not involved in this offense. And I can also see Shane Steichen trying to get him more involved early, trying to get him more a part of the game plan to start out to just keep the team on notice, and the team, I mean the Saints, on notice that we've got a dog here as our top wide receiver. So in my opinion, I just have this feeling that Pittman could be in line for a really big game on Sunday and give the Saints defense some fits.
Yeah, and the only concern is like if Marshawn Lattimore, who is still an absolute, I mean, he's an absolutely phenomenal cornerback. If he's draped over Pittman, that could be a little bit tougher. But I think that a couple of things. I think that Josh Downs established himself as a problematic type of receiver to deal with. I mean, he's starting to really catch a lot of volume in these games and just had a career game already last week where he had over 100 yards receiving. So I think the Saints have to address him. I still think that even though it was kind of a rough game for the tight ends, even still minus Jelani Woods, it's a talented group. You have to address them. And then I even put it in my piece about the three things the offense has to do to win against the Saints. One of those things is Alec Pierce needs to finally have a big play in this game. It can't all be Downs. It can't all be Pittman. Rest assured, Allen is going to be ready for those two. I think that's why Alec Pierce really needs to do something big. Maybe he gets that first touchdown of the year. But yeah, man, I agree with you. I think at the end of the day, however it's done, whether someone else steps up and he opens up later or he opens up right out of the gate, I think Michael Pittman's due for a big game, and I think he's going to prove it on Sunday.
And yeah, there is Marshawn Lattimore on the other side of things, but honestly, Marshawn Lattimore is not going to follow Michael Pittman all over the field. There really most teams don't do that anymore. Yeah, I'm sure Pittman and Lattimore are going to be matched up with each other on a few plays, but you can move Pittman around. Pittman doesn't just stay. Gone are the days where, like in the mid 2000s, where you always had Marvin Harrison on the right, Reggie Wayne on the left. These wide receivers move around quite a bit, and Pittman is out wide. Pittman's in the slot. They really move Michael Pittman all over the place in Shane Steichen's offense. So, and when I was talking to the guys over at the Dome Patrol podcast, our New Orleans Saints affiliate on the Fans First Sports Network, they talked about that on that defense. I mean, they've got Marshawn Lattimore, but if you really want to hurt this Saints defense, it's in the slot. So that could be another big day from Josh Downs in the slot. But or if they want to put Michael Pittman in the slot in certain situations, I mean, good luck there. So the Saints are really hurting in that nickel spot right now, and that could be where we see the Colts really attack on the offensive side of the ball, at least through the air.
Yeah, I see that happening more realistically than anything else, given that Minshew, the best way you get him going is not just with a ground attack, but it's also with those short death by a thousand paper cut type throws where you can just inch the ball down the field and then the defense comes up and then he can actually hit some of those throws when he's got a little more space to throw it downfield.
Now let's move to the offensive side or the defensive side of the ball, Drake, and a guy that has traditionally given the Colts issues over the past few seasons, Derek Carr. Derek Carr is now with the New Orleans Saints, and it's been a rocky start to the Derek Carr era there down there in New Orleans. Certainly hasn't been as advertised, and I think I really haven't been able to watch the Saints too much this season because usually they're on when I'm down in Indy covering the Colts games. But when you're talking about what we saw at least last weekend with Derek Carr on, I think it was Monday night that he played, just was not. It seems like there's a lot of frustration with Derek Carr there, or was it Thursday night? Either way, primetime game when Derek Carr was going up last week, just a lot of frustration with his offense, with his offensive coordinator, with his receivers not being on the same page. Things don't look good there in New Orleans, and I think one way to continue that trend for this Colts team, for this Colts defense, get pressure on Derek Carr. That's a very easy way to get this man rattled.
Yeah, and we've talked about how, obviously every quarterback struggles with pressure, but it's a spectrum. It's like certain quarterbacks just make those beautiful throws when they're getting hit. Other guys are just far like they fall off a cliff in efficiency when that pressure comes. Carr is on the lower end of this. Okay, like he is efficient. He can make those downfield throws. He's got a better arm than people think. He's incredibly accurate, very smart. But man, you get that pressure on him. He's not just a different quarterback. He's a far worse quarterback, in my opinion. And it was last season. No, it was 2021 when the Colts ended up losing that game against the Raiders. Carr still threw 2 interceptions in that game, and it was because they got pressure on him. So he's going to give you the ball if you get to him. So I think that the defensive ends need to have a big game. I think that especially without Johnson, if he's not going to go, I think that you have to think about the interior here. I think Taven Bryan, who's a pass rushing specialist, he could have a big game. Do we see Lewis and Odangbo potentially on the interior? I just think that Gus Bradley is his number one priority is get to Derek Carr and force mistakes.
Right. And currently the Saints are tied with, I think, tied for, I think it's 5th in the NFL in sacks allowed with 20. So you can definitely get some pressure on Derek Carr, and that's going to be the best thing for this Colts defense to force him into some mistakes. If you let Derek Carr sit back there in the pocket all day, he is a veteran quarterback that can take the underneath and really pick you apart. You have to get pressure right up in his face. Can't let him get comfortable in the pocket, make it a muddy pocket. And this is where guys like Samson Ebukam and Kwity Paye really need to step up. Samson Ebukam, you hardly heard his name last week against the Browns. Kwity Paye was making quite a few tackles in the running game, but didn't really see too much pressure on Deshaun Watson or PJ Walker. You need both these guys to get back there, really get into Derek Carr's face and make him get rid of the football before he's ready. Would love to see another Kwity Paye sack, who got off to a really fast start, but again, he had that concussion, missed the game, and now it's like he's trying to ramp things up all over again. Kwity Paye really needs to make a force and then start getting pressure on the quarterback at a more consistent rate.
And that's look, they still have good pass catchers, all right. They still have Chris Olave. They still have Michael Thomas. And Rashid Shaheed has shown ability to play really well. Alvin Kamara is back, and he's still one of the best pass catching backs in the league. So Derek Carr, the problem with the Saints offense, and I hate to say this right now, but it's Derek Carr. And it's the blocking. It's the pass blocking. They've got weapons. They just don't have the blocking for him to get the ball to them. So if the Colts can continue to get that pressure, those weapons won't matter as much.
That's a perfect segue into our next topic, is how is this Colts defense really going to contain the pass catchers that the New Orleans Saints have? You just mentioned it: Chris Olave, Michael Thomas, Alvin Kamara, all of these, Rashid Shaheed, all of these guys are really good pass catchers and do a really good job of getting open as well. So with the Colts secondary that likely will be down Juju Brents. Still, they're not going to have Dallas Flowers. It could be Jalen Jones and Daryl Baker Jr. starting again at those outside corner positions with Kenny Moore in the slot. So how do you think the Colts are going to do being able to contain all these pass catchers that the Saints have?
Oh man, I think the slot corner position is going to be fine. Obviously, Kenny Moore's playing out of his freaking mind.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not as worried about Jalen Jones. I think Jalen Jones has so much room to grow. He's obviously still inexperienced and he's still a rookie, but man, he just has a dog in him. He's a physical corner. He's going to come and constantly be hitting you until the end of the game. He's always in your face and he's never going to go away. But my concern is Daryl Baker Jr. I understand that there was a time when we were talking in training camp about how he had ascended and he really did come out of nowhere. But now we're seeing badly missed tackles. We're seeing blown coverage. We're seeing, penalties. Despite I understand what happened in the Browns game, but you've seen penalties with him also in other games, and just not being able to stay in sync with the rest of the defense. And I think that Olave, Thomas, Shaheed. I know that Foster Moreau and Johnson really aren't the premier tight end duo in the NFL, but anybody can make him pay. And I think Daryl Baker Jr. needs to show that he's worthy of a spot on an NFL roster. He needs to play well in this game, or else I think you're going to see the Saints offense move the ball wherever he's at. They're going to start to track him. They'll throw the ball to the receivers that he's covering if he's not going to cover him well.
Thoughts and prayers in the chat for Stats Matt. Nothing like getting pulled over while listening to you guys. Damn it, Stats Matt. That's just rough, buddy. That's rough. And hey, if you still have us on, please, officer, give him a break.
And subscribe, officer, to the show.
Subscribe to the Horseshoe Huddle podcast. We'll get you right, buddy. But give Stats Matt, the third co-host. Hey, no ticket, so all good. There we go. Stats Matt off the hook. All thanks to the Horseshoe Huddle podcast. You heard it here first. So good to see that Stats Matt is able to keep going. I was about to see if I could find the Cops theme song that I was going to have to play for good old Stats Matt there. But yeah, Drake, Daryl Baker Jr. and honestly, I mean, I wrote a whole article about how good he looked in training camp. Daryl Baker Jr. was playing out of his mind.
He looked really good.
He looked good. Yeah. He was physical. He was sticky to those wide receivers and coverage, and it has not translated to the regular season for Daryl Baker Jr. And I mean, to go from being the top starter on the outside to now like cornerback 5, and fans are kind of groaning when they see you come in the game. It's bad. So I mean, the Colts are just going to have to kind of work around those sorts of things. They're gonna, and Daryl Baker Jr. I know he caught a lot of flack this past week because both those calls were against him, the calls that never should have been made in the first place. So I'm sure that's going to give Daryl Baker Jr. It's going to give him some extra motivation to come back out there and really try to dominate and show the world that that was a fluke game. I'm better than this, and I can play better than this. But if I'm the Saints, that's probably who I'm going after. So whether it's Chris Olave or Michael Thomas on that side, I mean, Daryl Baker Jr., I think, is going to have to go out there and prove that the Saints can't throw on him, because the Saints are probably going to target him every chance they get until he steps up and shows, this isn't just going to be pick on me all day. I'm going to put up a fight, and you're not just going to do this on me. So can he do that? I'm not exactly sure, but I think that could be one of the keys to the game, and if he is consistently giving up yards, then it might be time to put Kenny Moore over there on that outside, bring Nick Cross into the slot, something like that. So it'll be interesting to see how everything goes on Sunday. But Drake, give me your X factor. Who is the guy this week that's going to make the difference in whether the Colts win or they lose their third straight game?
Gosh, I was so torn on two different guys that I'm just going to make them into one. It's both Samson Ebukam and Kwity Paye. And I think that especially Ebicom, they need to get to Derek Carr. All right. Don't get me wrong. I understand the interior pressure has been able to happen all season for the Colts. Well, they don't have Grover Stewart. Okay. So it's going to be different. You're going to get more of a speed rush from Taven Bryan. And if the aforementioned Lewis and Odangbo rotate in, that's more of a power rush. So it's not the same. I think that these defensive ends need to have big games or the rotational pieces going behind them. So if both of those guys could get a sack or more, I mean, that'd be one hell of a performance, and it would really help this team get that fourth win.
I really like that pick. I'm going to go with Darrell Baker Jr., who we just
Ooh.
talked about, because he's going to be in that role. And both the receivers that he's going to go up against on Sunday, very, very good wide receivers, very good route runners. So he can't be fooled. He has to be able to play and have good coverage on these guys. Otherwise, Derek Carr is just going to pick on him the entire game. And especially in third down situations where it's going to be like 3rd and 8, 3rd and 9, if the Colts can get them into those. And all of a sudden it's like a slant to Michael Thomas for 10 or 11 yards. And it just keeps the drive going. So Colts are gonna need a big game out of Darrell Baker Jr. You can't let anything deep. You can't miss any tackles. He's got big shoes to fill in Juju Brents, because Brents has been playing very, very well as a rookie. Baker needs to step in, kind of try to create some of that magic that he had in training camp. And if Baker can hold his own and perform at that level that we saw in training camp, I think it gives this Colts team a huge boost against the Saints. So prediction time, Drake. Again, week 8, Colts Saints inside Lucas Oil Stadium. Huge game for both teams. Who you got coming out on top?
I got Colts 27-17. And
okay.
I know I mentioned it could be a defensive slugfest, and it could, because both defenses bring it. The Colts bring it through the run, and the Saints bring it with pass defense. So I think that there's a chance that there could be a stalemate. And man, I two things. One, that ground game, I think it's going to be humming. I think that Minshew's going to have an opportunity to bounce back because of it. So I think the points will be there. Also, as we've mentioned on the show, two things. The Colts are the only team in the NFL to score 20 or more points in every single game they played this season. And they're one of the top 10 most categories offensively. They're in the top 10. So I think that this is an offense that can exploit the Saints' run defense. And I also just think that there's going to be pressure put on Derek Carr. There's going to at least be a turnover.
I like this comment from NFL Nerd. NFL Nerd says, other key is which team will the refs put their money on? And hey, with what we saw last week, that might not be a joke. So we see some other predictions coming in. We have Colts House saying 31-17 Colts. We have Stats Matt 30-20 Colts. We have Sean Conkright saying 24-16. Okay. Greg Eggleston says time for a 50 burger. That would be wild to see inside of there, but I think all you guys are on the right side of this thing. I've picked against the Colts the past 2 weeks. I'm going with the Colts this week. This team is still fired up from how they lost that game against the Cleveland Browns. They really want to, they know they need to turn this around. So I think that lit a fire into this team, and the Saints are struggling. So going up against a struggling Saints team who's going to be on the road against this Colts team, Lucas Oil Stadium is going to be fired up. I'm going Colts 27, Saints 20. So I think they win by a touchdown, get back into the win column, and get back to 4-4 before they head off to Carolina to take on the Panthers with former Colts head coach Frank Reich. So Drake, let's touch on the injuries for the Colts, because there's some pretty big ones heading into this game against the New Orleans Saints. But first, we gotta give an update on QB1, Anthony Richardson. So Anthony Richardson underwent successful surgery on his sprained AC joint on Tuesday. It was done by the same doctor that did Aaron Rodgers' Achilles surgery just a couple of months ago. And and from everything we've heard, Richardson is in great spirits. The surgery was a success, and it not only is the AC joint sprain now fixed, it has been reinforced with that surgery. So an injury like this can never happen again for Anthony Richardson. And Drake, I think the biggest, maybe not surprise, but the best thing about this, Richardson's 2 days removed from surgery. Today was his first day of physical therapy. He is already attacking rehab and trying to get back as quickly as he can just 2 days after his surgery. I mean, that doesn't say this kid is determined to come back just as good, if not better, than he ever has been. I don't know what does.
Yeah, and this is the same guy you mentioned, Aaron Rodgers' injury. I mean, he's on a faster timetable to a return than they thought he was originally. So, I mean, this is a guy who knows what he's doing, and he's league renowned for doing a very great job. And so, the fact that Richardson, like you said, that's the big thing. He's already attacking rehab on his throwing shoulder. Fantastic news, and this is going to be a guy who, when he returns, that's going to be a guy who's going to be determined to set the league on fire.
Right. Right. It's and all indications are now the Colts aren't going to put a timeline on it, but Shane Steichen has said that Richardson should be back by the time the Colts begin spring workouts. So kind of think about OTAs next year in the offseason program. AR5 should be ready to go by then. So really good news on that front for Anthony Richardson. Let's talk about the other injuries that the Colts are looking at for this week against the Saints. Now, there's 4 guys that have not practiced all week. We mentioned Juju Brent's dealing with a quad injury, still hasn't practiced and likely will not play against the Saints. Kylan Granson still in the concussion protocol, has not practiced yet. It doesn't seem like he's going to be able to play this week either. Braden Smith still out with that hip and wrist injury, so Blake Freeland will likely get the start at right tackle. And Eric Johnson, who did a pretty good job filling in for Grover Stewart, especially in the run game last week. Hurt his ankle at the end of that Browns game. He has not played, or I'm sorry, he has not practiced at all either. And then Zach Moss, the final name on this, did not practice on Wednesday due to an elbow and heel injury, but was a limited participant in today's practice. So it looks like he is trending to be good to go on Sunday. But Drake, here in that list, who's the position, or who's the guy you are most concerned the Colts not having on Sunday?
There's a couple, but I think it's kind of cliche, but I have to go with it. Juju Brents, just because I understand Alvin Kamara is a phenomenal running back, but I think that not having a solid defensive tackle is more of a problem for a runner like Nick Chubb, a runner like Jonathan Taylor, a runner like Derrick Henry, just those real gritty guys that are going to run it right through the middle. Juju Brent's not being in that game, and Darrell Baker Jr. against the receivers that the Saints have, even though they've been struggling, they still have great weapons to use. That's the most concerning to me. So, man, it's all on Darrell Baker Jr. I love your X factor. I think that's the injury that sticks out to me the most.
Right. Wyatt Law makes a great point here. He says at least Juju hasn't landed on IR yet.
Yeah.
And I think if he was going to be on IR, the Colts would have made that move already. So you can only hope that it's only a 1, maybe 2 week injury for Juju Brents before he gets back onto the field. Patrick also asked a good question. What the hell is going on with Jelani Woods? Dude, like Homer Simpson disappearing into the bushes. And Patrick, I wish I could tell you, buddy, because that's kind of been a interesting question to go around the Colts facility is about Jelani Woods. He hasn't played yet this year because he's been dealing with that hamstring injury. It's going on 2 months now, a little over 2 months since we've seen Jelani Woods because of that hamstring. The only explanation I can give you, hamstrings are tricky. And I know the Colts want to make sure that Woods is completely healthy before he comes back, because you could also think that you're healthy and then one slight move and you're back to square one with hamstring injuries. Shane Steichen has said he's progressing well and he could be on the cusp of returning here very soon. But I think the Colts offense would love to have their 6'7" tight end back into the fold as soon as possible.
Yeah, and I mean, just being such a large dude, you also want to make sure that hamstring is good, because there's so much weight that's going into pushing off on routes and blocking and everything else. But on top of that, man, we've seen the tight end group do well, overall for the Colts. without Jelani Woods. So, two questions. One, what kind of potential could you see him go to with Jelani Woods, and who would be the odd man out? That's something I know that's kind of random, but I've been thinking about. That. I don't think the Colts would keep all those guys.
Yeah, it'd be an interesting numbers game for sure. Let's dive into the latest Colts news and rumors, Drake. Before we wrap up here tonight, we're going to start out with the big man. We're going to start out with old Jimmy from the Colts, Jim Irsay. Love the man, absolutely love the man. Jim Irsay on Tuesday night revealed that the NFL admitted the two calls at the end of the Colts Browns contest were wrong, just like we had talked about the entire time. So a round of applause for us, round of applause for the all of us who said that, you know, this was a crock of you know what, and hey, good for the NFL for admitting it. However, the NFL does not like, and I don't think it's allowed for owners or anyone to know about this, to admit this. So Jim Irsay is probably going to get fined for that. And you know what? Jim Irsay does not give a damn if he gets fined for that either. Good for Jim Irsay, and good for him making it public. And as I said, like I always do, the league always wants transparency. Unless it doesn't benefit, or the league wants transparency if it benefits the shield and nothing else.
Yeah, and hey, I think it was Ian Rappaport that said it really well. He was like, look, Jim Irsay is probably going to face a fine for this. I think that something that's been floated around, or like, are the Colts going to lose a draft pick next year? Whatever. Ian Rappaport goes, I don't think he really cares though, and he's like, it's because he did that for his fans. He said Jim Irsay interacts unlike any other owner, on Twitter, and interacts with his fans unlike any owner. So if you're a Colts fan, be happy that you have an owner like this, because for a billionaire, what are they going to fine him for that exactly? It's like it's going to be a drop in the ocean for him. So I think that it's very concerning. I think the league, who loves its image, as you know, they're going to do everything they can to remedy this officiating situation. And hey, I think that you're going to start to see some. I think you almost have to see something happen. Do I think that it's going to come in the form of making every what did he ask for? Every penalty within 2 minutes challengeable, was it, or
Yeah,
replayable?
so Irsay also, in that same tweet, he called for instant replay on all plays, including penalties, in the last 2 minutes of every game. Don't have a problem with that at all. Last 2 minutes, if you want to do it throughout the entire game, then it's probably okay. It's a little bit obsessive. And I know we all love football, but I don't know if we want to sit there and watch 6 hours worth of the same game. But in the last 2 minutes, to help ensure that a game isn't wronged at the very end by penalties, all for it. All for instant replay on all of those.
Yeah, I'm 100% right there with you. And I think that even if you just go at the end of this, even if you do the 2 minute warnings, okay,
Mhm.
even if you just don't do it after, within 2 minutes of every quarter, just do the at the end of the half and at the end of the game. That's usually when the biggest plays happen, in close games that decide the contest at the end of it, as we just saw. So, hey, you know what? Regardless of if it's allowed or not, a lot of people actually really respect Jim Irsay for doing this, and I think that it's something that we all really knew. It's just nobody was saying it, and the NFL definitely didn't want anybody to.
Good for Jim Irsay.
Yeah.
Stats Matt with a $2 super chat here. Thank you so much, Stats Matt. After getting
Ooh.
pulled over and almost getting a ticket, Stats Matt says we need to talk about Jonathan Taylor on Zaire Franklin's show, and so that's exactly what we are going to do. So Jonathan Taylor did make an appearance on Zaire Franklin and EJ Speed's podcast called The Trenches. He came on as a special guest, and really Zaire and EJ Speed did a really good job of interviewing Jonathan Taylor and allowing him to kind of talk through the entire situation, with talking with the Colts, talking with his agent, and just really the whole process on everything. So Drake, I don't know if you got a chance to listen to this, but honestly, it was a really eye-opening conversation, and I think it really shed some light into that. Maybe it wasn't. I mean, I know Jonathan Taylor's agent was saying a lot of things, but at least from Jonathan Taylor's end, it wasn't as bad as it really seemed.
Yeah, and you also kind of, if you first off, highly recommend that everyone go watch that and listen to it. you really learn that I mean, what is he going to do? Anything he would have said, regardless, would have been taken as negative. And he even said, I love the Colts fans. I love the Colts community. They're amazing. He's like, but some of them really went in, like, I mean, it was, and I remember putting it out on X. I was one of the people, I didn't go in hardcore, but I was like, Jonathan Taylor doesn't want to be an Indianapolis Colt. I was like, he just does not want to do this. And I also thought he was going to get traded. None of those things happened. And you learn that really he just kind of let his agent do the talking. A lot of people let their lawyer do the talking in a legal matter. He was just letting his agent do most of the talking. And they loved Jonathan Taylor from the entire standpoint. And he said something to the tune of like, I knew I wanted to be here. I knew I wanted to stay here long term. This is a perfect fit for me. This place is perfect for what I'm trying to do. So all you need to know is Jonathan Taylor never had any ill will, any true ill will towards the Colts. And it wasn't even the same way back at him. A lot of it was Jim Irsay and Malky Cobbler, in my opinion.
Yeah, and I found it really interesting how he talked about how he even thought about representing himself in this whole thing. But then once you actually get down into the negotiations, I mean, you need that buffer in there, because those negotiations can, if you're not careful and you don't take the personal out of it, and you can't strictly focus on business, those discussions can get heated. And honestly, I mean, you want to talk about the Colts and say, well, that's not how they should negotiate. That's how every team negotiates. You have to pick apart those players and say, he doesn't, yeah, he's great, but he doesn't do this, he doesn't do this, he doesn't do this. So that way you can try to get that number down. That's just how negotiating is. That's why NFL players hire these agents, so that way they don't have to risk that spoiling. They can let their agents kind of go up to bat for them and negotiate, make sure they get the terms that are fair for both sides and fair for their clients. So I thought it was very interesting. If you haven't listened to it all yet, please go subscribe. It's called The Trenches with Zaire Franklin, I think is the official title, but it's Zaire, EJ Speed. They not only talk to Jonathan Taylor, but they talk through the loss against the Jacksonville Jaguars. They talked about the win against the Tennessee Titans in the last episode. So they talk about a whole range of topics, and it's a funny show as well. So make sure you go give it a listen to kind of hear the full interview with Jonathan Taylor on that. Thanks a lot, Stats Matt, for your support and for bringing up that fun topic to discuss here. So got a couple practice squad moves. This guy was a little bit intriguing, in my opinion, Drake. The Colts signed defensive tackle Ross Blacklock to the practice squad. Was a former second-round pick out of TCU. Really liked his game coming out. Seemed like he was a good pass rusher, but he's got that big body too. I think he's like 6'5", 307 pounds. Can really be a force in the middle. So with Grover Stewart out for 5 more games, Eric Johnson dealing with that injury, Ross Blacklock could be a piece to help insert there in the middle of the Colts defensive line.
Yeah, and if I'm not mistaken, I mean, I know that I believe he was drafted by the Texans, and then he played for Jacksonville as well. So like you're talking about a guy who understands the AFC South. And I remember writing the breaking piece on him. This dude, like you mentioned, he's perfect for what the Colts need right now. I mean, he really is. Like, I wouldn't be surprised at all if I even said that if Johnson's injury sustains, don't be surprised if they move some things around to get him on the active roster, because I mean, he's started in the past. He's got plenty of game experience for what the Colts need right now. They don't need a guy that's going to go out there and be Grover Stewart. All right. You need a guy that's hard to move. You need a guy that's going to plug those running gaps, and it's going to, and he's just going to give enough pressure up the middle to let some of the other faster edge rushers get to the quarterback. So I like the signing, and I think that, like I said, if these injuries continue in the interior, you might see him on the active roster soon.
Yeah, and I think it could be interesting, add some depth to that defensive line, especially in the middle, that really needs it. And then to make room for Ross Blacklock, the Colts did release safety Henry Black from the practice squad. So big game on Sunday for the Indianapolis Colts, Drake, going up against a struggling Saints team. They really, in my opinion, need to get this win if they want to give themselves some momentum to start the second half of the year. If not, the Colts are staring at 3-5, and really any chance that they might have to make something out of this season might be slowly dwindling away. So I know the Colts are going to come out firing, and I think it's going to be a really fun contest between these two teams.
Yeah, and hey, they also not only do they want to get their fourth win of the season, but I mean, let's see, 0-1, 0-2, 1-2, 1-3. They're 1-3 at home. All right,
Mhm.
that's 25% at your own place. As they've done better on the road than they have at home. So I really think that this is a big game for the Colts and guys like Michael Pittman, guys like Gardner Minshew. The just after what happened with the defensive penalties last week, I think this is a team that is ready to kick some ass, and I think that they're angry.
Well said. And that's our show for tonight, guys. Really, really appreciate everybody tuning in and talking some Colts football with us on this Thursday night. Shout out to all of our super chats from this evening. Shout out to Truett, beautiful wife Danielle, Brandon Moses, who's going to be a father tomorrow. So send congrats to him. The CFO,
Woo!
Patrick Rye, and then the third co-host of the show, Stats Matt. Thank you all so much for all of your super chats and everybody else that came on tonight and helped support us and talk some Colts football. It's always a lot of fun. If you haven't done so, please go follow us on all of our socials, like Horseshoe Huddle on Facebook, follow at Colts on FN on X, and subscribe to the Horseshoe Huddle YouTube channel. Hit that bell so you know whenever Drake and I go live, whenever Shad goes live at the Saddle Up Show, and also hit that like button on this video if you enjoyed tonight's episode. And if you can't catch us live or on YouTube, Apple, Spotify, Google, wherever you listen to podcasts, we're on there as well. So make sure you subscribe and give us a 5-star review. Drake, I know you've been writing away for horseshoehuddle.com like we all have been. Tell the people what they can go check out that you've written.
I just did a little piece on Shane Steichen announcing that Jelani Woods is trending toward a return. So go check that out if you're interested in learning a little more. And then my 3 offensive keys to the Colts beating the Saints, that's out. And then tomorrow I will have the defensive keys as well.
Make sure you go check those out on the site. For myself, Michael Pittman Jr. He came out yesterday and cleared up his comments. So I dug into the real reason he made those comments and what we could be seeing ahead from number 11. So make sure you check that out. Oh, yeah. Then I want to give you guys a preview. Omaha Productions. Ever heard of him? Peyton Manning's production company is coming out with an episode of Peyton's Places this weekend. All about Indianapolis. Pat McAfee's going to be on the show, and Omaha Productions reached out to me to get a little sneak peek at what that episode is going to be about. So make sure you check out horseshoehuddle.com on Sunday morning for my recap of the episode and just to give you a little bit of a taste of what that episode's going to be about. And I tell you what, I've already watched it. It's definitely a good one. So go follow Drake at DWalsterDrake. You can follow me at Andrew Moore NFL, and we will be back Monday night to break down the Colts against the Saints and everything in between. So enjoy your weekend, enjoy the game on Sunday, and we'll be seeing you Monday night.